A soldier, an airman, and a Marine walk into a room. This show is The Punchline. My name is Ryan Smeltz, and you're watching Veteran Talk Show. All right, guys. So in case you don't know, we are an affiliate for Soldier Girl Coffee Company. I'm super excited about this because they have amazing coffee. And in future episodes, you will see us drinking Soldier Girl coffee. They also have a CBD coffee. So if you need some CBD, which helps support your health in a sense of relaxation, it helps with your sleep and your overall health on a day-to-day basis, then Soldier Girl coffee has both that and the caffeine you need. So be sure to check out the link in the show notes. Go ahead and click that, shop around, and make sure you get yourself some Soldier Girl coffee today.
I'm catching up on a story.
I have absolutely no idea what you're talking about.
What? You don't know that reference?
Queen of America.
You don't know that? Have you ever seen the old Three Musketeers with Chris O'Donnell and what's the guy from 24? What was his name?
Jack Bauer.
Yeah, but the guy who plays Jack Bauer. What's his? Kiefer Sutherland. It had Charlie Sheen in it. It's from like 95. You don't remember this? You never saw this as a kid? The Three Musketeers Disney movie, live action.
I think
it's a great movie.
I'm thinking about the Three Amigos.
That's also a good movie.
That's what
but completely off. No, the three Musketeers. Anyways, in the scene, there's a scene that is like, this scarf is given to me by the Queen of America. And Chris O'Donnell goes, there's no such thing as the Queen of America. And he goes, listen here, peasant, I have been in her presence. And it's fucking hilarious. I can't remember what that actor's name is. Oliver something. I don't know. It's good. Anyways, I was reading while we were doing the hour and a half of mic checks.
Good Lord. I will tell you, like,
I need to turn this off, I think.
One thing I have done in the past is move to something new just because, like, you know, like plugging everything in or like the lapel mics. I'm like, okay, I know how it works. And I don't run enough tests or checks. And then after the fact, or I change something. Like most recently on my computer, you know, on your computer in the back end under the microphone, you can change the level of the microphone, which is the level of pickup. And something I've never really messed with it or anything. And so I think what happened is I was watching something on my computer on my headphones, and recently for some reason just plugged directly into the computer. I don't get enough volume. Like I can turn it all the way up and it's not noticeable. So to actually solve the problem, I actually plug into a USB microphone that has an additional output volume setting.
Right.
That's how I solved it. But in trying to fix it, I inadvertently turned the volume up on the microphone setting. So what that does is, like at home, I use that program I told you about, Wirecast, to record because it does everything that soundboard does for USB mics. Takes out background noise, makes the quality a little bit better. And I kept struggling with like the gain and the noise gate to get to a point where when I wasn't talking, it was silent. That was perfect. The issue is when I would start talking, all of a sudden you could hear the fan, the air conditioner, the dishwasher,
everything.
And I'm like, why is it doing it? And it's because eventually I had gone in the back end and turned the microphone up to 100. The perfect setting to get the best audio quality is around 70. So with it being on 100, that microphone was picking. And the crazy thing about it is the microphone is like a $20 mic.
Right.
It picked up every single noise. And that's just one example of where, you know, in that specific scenario, I wasn't paying attention. I turned up the volume on the mic when I should have been trying to turn up the volume on my headset. But I make a change or an adjustment, and then I just kind of roll with it like, oh, I'll figure it out. which for putting out content is advantageous because then we put out episodes upon episodes of the Veteran Talk Show.
Right.
But for the audio quality, it's like we use these microphones. These microphones with that box, I think they came with that box, these stands, the cheap headphones I got, all these cords, everything. It was a really cheap set. It was really nice. And they're like the best quality that we've used. We try to use those lapel mics. Obviously, there's a disconnect in the program I'm using, the app I'm using on my phone. But
well, I'll do some research on some different microphones.
But these right here, like if I were to go out right now and buy more microphones, I would get these. I don't even like the fact that they're wireless because the batteries could die, but it's like just keeps them charged.
Yeah. Well, I keep them charged when we're not recording. When I had everything here, I would just keep them. I'd come up about middle of the week.
Yeah. And that's why I got
replace the batteries
because then we've got backups if we need them. But
yeah, I'd replace the batteries and leave them, and then a day or two after that, I'd unplug the thing. We'd have a fresh set of batteries.
Yeah, but the corded microphones are another prime example because like they work really well, but you got to get it perfect. And then if anything is wrong in that line,
yeah,
you get line noise, you get disconnect, you get
right.
With these, it's just crystal clear until the batteries die. And you can hear it if you're listening, you can hear when the batteries start to die.
Well, it's not like old cassette players where it used to just slow down like this. But a bunch of people watching are like, what the fuck is it, a cassette tape?
Yeah.
That's because I'm old. That's because I'm old.
I told you I wanted to use glasses so the name of the beer isn't.
But you can see the Bud Light shitty,
the
shitty Bud Light box
in the frame.
I'm not drinking Bud Light. I don't drink that shit.
We're not talking about what we're drinking.
Well, obviously we are because you can see it right there by the couch.
I'm gonna cut it out. And I'm gonna cut out the part where we talk about what it is.
Oh,
yeah. See all that space around us?
Yeah.
That's like a canvas. That's the area I have to work with. So if when I'm talking, I want to punch in on my face, I can.
Oh, nice.
And then when you're talking, I zoom in.
Well, when I reorganize the room next week and do all my painting and make this more, I don't know how it's going to look, to be honest with you.
We'll figure it out.
I've got grand plans, but I'm not an interior designer. So I don't really know what it'll look like. My wife seems to think, it's going to be nice. I'm going to like it for when the room's not used to record. It's going to be a great little kind of reading room for me to kind of come into,
where all the chairs are pointed towards the television.
Kind of, yeah. But the television will be on one side of the room, the couch will be in the middle, and then like the back half of this room, like so over on this side will be like the little reading room. The only time we really watch TV up here this is also like the folding laundry room. So like the only time we watch TV is when like on laundry day, when we are folding, all the laundry.
All the laundry.
Oh yeah, because we'll be in here. We'll just turn on something real fast and just like, because all we have on that thing is like Netflix and I think Amazon Prime. We don't have any of our other.
I like how you say that. All we have on that thing is Netflix. Netflix is like the digital 2022 equivalent to an entire Blockbuster store, right?
Yes, but
all we have on that thing,
but
is
not
every single movie you could possibly watch.
First of all, not since competition has come out.
Not since competition. That's fair.
So actually, Amazon Prime is, I think, better than Netflix now.
I could agree with that.
HBO Max is 1,000 times better than both of those.
I don't know. I don't really pay attention to HBO Max, but also,
oh, dude, when it comes
to Amazon Prime, Amazon Video does a lot. The
like
same
Prime
with their
Video?
music. Like if you are a Prime customer,
yeah,
you get a lot of stuff included with that.
You get a lot of stuff, and like so, we originally, long before Amazon, this is how I fell into the evils of Amazon. So we lived in Colorado when we first became Amazon Prime members. This is back before like there was a Prime Video streaming service. Like Prime just basically meant you got like 1 to 2 days of shipping on stuff from the Amazon store. And sometimes on some things, right? Yeah. And so like we couldn't come home back then for Christmas because my job was like no vacation during November, December. So it's the busiest times of the year for us. And so I would basically have to do all my Christmas shopping for family members and just ship directly to their house. And I was like, it's nice because Prime members get to just ship it directly there and it gets there real quick. And that's why we became, and we just shopped for everything in Prime.
What year was that?
2014, 2013?
Okay.
Something like that.
So the reason I ask is because I don't think I heard of Amazon until 2005, 2007.
Yeah, I didn't hear of Amazon until like 2010.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, okay.
Actually, she's the one who told me
it's
about
a bookstore.
Yeah, like so I thought Amazon up until we moved in together.
Yeah.
I always thought Amazon was like just a place where you would like go online, buy a book, and was shipped to your house. And I'm like,
100%.
I was like, why the fuck do I need that? I have a fucking library card. I don't have to buy a book. I can just go for free to this government institution, check a book out, and as long as I return it in time, I have nothing to pay for.
Where nobody goes anymore.
No one goes. That is shocking to me.
Not just that, but it's funny because
actually we go to library. Well, she goes a lot more than I do, but
the libraries have significantly,
right there,
especially the kind of locations where there's more money.
Yeah,
they've done a lot to increase what they have available as far as digital access, subscription services, things you can use, the internet service inside of the library. That's another thing that used to irritate the crap out of me when you talk to a soldier and they're like, oh, I couldn't do it because I don't have internet. Come on, guy, go to the learning center, get on the internet. Like it's in walking distance of the barracks. But anyways, I thought Amazon was books, and I don't think I even bothered to take a second look at ever ordering anything from Amazon until after 2015, after I got out of the Army.
So when she and I were living together up until I think it was like around 2015, like she was like, oh, I'll just buy it on Amazon. I was like, only books are on Amazon. And she's like, no, dumbass.
No, dumbass.
Amazon is a huge, she's like, it's like Walmart online.
And you're like, first of all, I didn't know that. And secondly, don't call me dumbass.
I would never say that to her.
It's hurtful.
She'd still call me a dumbass. No. But she explained what Amazon was. Are you coming in here to explain Amazon? That's true. You did work for some bougie people.
Literally everything delivered before it
and
she had to,
and now it's not a bougie thing.
And now it's not a bougie.
Just like
no, but back then.
Now I talk to people and they're like, I gotta go
your bougie bosses were actually probably your nicest bosses you've had until like this year. Like they were some of the nicest bosses. Like they were great. I would love to tell you stories that I can't put on a podcast about them. I know. She just looked at me. He's like,
doesn't involve cocaine or murder, does it?
Maybe it does. Maybe it doesn't. You're a narcotics agent. Like why do you asking so many goddamn questions?
That's horrible bosses. That's not nice bosses. Depends on
the context.
Yeah.
So I had no idea that Amazon, and then she was like, yeah, I'm an Amazon Prime member. I was like, I don't even fucking know what that means. And then she explained it to me and then she showed it to me.
You're like the rainforest.
And I'm like, this is awesome. How is this not a thing? And then I became like an addict. Like I don't like to this day, I do not do any shopping on my own. I'm like, I need new boots. Pull up my Amazon. I was like, I don't need to go to an outlet store or a mall or something to be like, try on jeans. I'm like, I know what my sizes are. I know what I fucking like. Boom.
And
there
it
is.
If you don't and you get it and it's wrong or it doesn't fit or you don't like it or it took too long or the dog chewed it up or it rained that day or you're in a bad mood or you didn't get the flavor ice cream you wanted.
Yeah. Anything.
Or the news was on.
Anything.
Send it back.
Yeah. Send it the fuck back.
Send it back.
No problems.
I think this is a good opening to today's discussion.
So Amazon, if you ever want to sponsor, I mean, I will sponsor you, but you are an evil company to go and work for. Go ahead. That's my 2 cents.
Definitely.
I will use your.
They are.
I will use your. I will look. I will. I
They
will
are
use
the
your
reason-
services.
They are the reason I have a job.
Yeah, I will use your
And
services
without them, I would
all
have
the
no
time,
job.
and I will praise them. But then I will virtue signal at the same time and be the biggest fucking hypocrite.
100%.
But at least I
Down
recognize
with
that
the
in
corporate
myself.
establishment.
At least I recognize that in myself. What leads us into our segue here?
Yeah, so I'm pulling it up right now. But basically
That
so that's
segues.
interesting because I guess I kind of missed the beginning, but I think the bulk of what we're talking about today is inflation and cancel culture. I did put politics, policies, social and economic. So I think getting into the specifics is the inflation and the cancel.
Okay,
culture.
so we're gonna solve all this shit, right?
And then-
We're gonna solve the problems of America.
I mean, I hope
strap
so.
the fuck in.
So I'll tell you, number one, if you haven't seen it recently, I did put some like
I just pulled it up. The Google Doc you sent me.
excuse me, yeah. Some prompts / questions.
Oh, I did not see that.
Under both of them. Well, the cancel culture one, I was scrambling.
Did you not send that to me? Or is it should just update in live time, right?
Yeah. But the cancel culture one, I was adding to that this morning while I was taking a shit right before I came over.
Oh,
here.
I see. Yeah, I see
So
the bullet
it's
point.
like-
What is it? What affects it?
Yeah,
I got you.
And then as far as like the politics policy, so I don't know if we need to necessarily start that general. But yeah.
So what do we want to talk? What do we want to talk? So we kind of led into cancel culture there.
Maybe a
Virtue
little bit.
signaling.
I was thinking like talking about Amazon more along the lines of the inflation, the $15 minimum wage ordeal, because they're one of the first companies who kind of hand in hand did the virtue signal. There was a purpose behind that too. There was a lady who complained because she was working at Amazon.
There were lots of people who complained. I mean, there were lots of.
Well, there was one that hit the news, and she was living in her car and got evicted, and all this.
This is the pregnant lady, right? Who was like not allowed to go take breaks and stuff, and so had to wear like a
made
diaper.
A big news story, and that was like right around the time, like right after that, Amazon was like, okay, starting pay, no matter where it is, minimum starting pay is $15 an hour.
Yeah.
And there's some locations, because they have places all over the world that are 17, 18,
Right.
whatever.
So from what my understanding, and I don't know if this is true at all, but from what I've read, Amazon tends to go to poorer areas, so they're not going to put themselves in an area like Beverly Hills. First of all, I don't think like Beverly Hills would want an Amazon warehouse there.
It's
right?
interesting you say it that way.
So they're going to areas where it's like they are the only game in town for the people, the type of people who are going to work in where. When I say type of people, I don't mean that in a racial, but like when you look at people who work in warehouses, they typically don't have college degrees. They typically don't come from a middle class type background,
and they're not seeking customer service roles that are customer facing. They're not going out door to door doing full commission sales.
They're looking, and I'm not saying this is true for all of them, but the majority of people who work in that, as someone who works in that industry, the vast majority of warehouse workers are very blue collar. They tend to think more of a, I don't want to say they don't plan for the future, because that's not true, or like live paycheck to paycheck, but they tend to
be happier with a more structured, consistent.
Right. I come to work. I do A and B and C, and then I clock out and I go home. Yeah. That's my life. I don't have that kind of rigid structure. Doesn't change.
Yeah.
That typically is who you find in warehousing work. Now, granted, there are those that are come in and who are, coming through college. I'm not saying that's all of them. I'm not saying that there aren't people who have dreams of starting their own business or anything like that. I'm just, by and large, the vast majority of people that's who they come to work in warehouses.
So jumping into it, I think the first question that comes up is for or against $15 an hour minimum wage. And when I asked that question,
I am on the fence, and there's a reason I am on the fence. It depends on what other structures and laws are in place, in my opinion, right? That are out there to kind of mitigate.
Yeah. So I think I can
mitigate
see
those things.
I think I can see both sides of it.
Yeah.
But just because I'm not an on the fence kind of guy, I'm against $15 minimum wage.
There is definitely, I think, more of a negative impact to it. $15 minimum wage does absolutely. It's a knee jerk. It's a knee jerk reaction to it's what our society always does. This is the problem. I'm going to do my knee jerk reaction, say the 10 magical words or whatever. This is like gun violence, right? There is a problem with gun violence in this country. I don't think anybody where you fall on Second Amendment, no one's going to question the fact that there is a problem with gun violence. The solve for gun violence is not take guns away. That's the knee-jerk reaction to solving gun violence, right?
I think when you're saying knee-jerk reaction, you're talking about the government legislating it.
Yes, you are not getting to the root of the issue. Someone is saying something at a governmental level that is like, this is the one thing, the root of the issue, and then everybody kind of gets on board with that and signals that this is where I fall on the political spectrum. And this is the cause that I'm going to either fight against or fight for.
No.
And it's not really the root cause. Like gun violence, like inflation, or not inflation, but minimum wage. There's a lot of things that go into minimum wage, right? There are a lot of other issues. People wanted.
I listened to about 4 or 5 YouTube videos on the way over here in preparation for this. That's why I said I think I could possibly legitimately say that I am on the fence for multiple reasons. And one of the reasons why I asked that question up front is because I would never want someone to say that they're for $15 minimum wage because someone is listening that possibly makes that or less than that. And they feel, oh, I want it to seem like I care about the little guy.
Well,
so I would, but I'm always a guy that takes a position. And I honestly do believe that all the studies I've seen and all the information I have, I am against it for many different reasons, which we'll get into. But like I said, I can see both sides, and a lot of that content I listened to on the way over here was talking about both.
It talks
both positions.
I think it's okay to fall on both sides because, first of all, life is not black and white. No matter what you choose, there are going to be people who are going to suffer. Right. That's going to be the realistic. Now, people listening to this are probably like
people, not puppies, though.
Yeah, people, not puppies. Well, I don't know. People are like, oh, well, if you're against $15 an hour, you're against like the little guy and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, no, because there's the initial problem I have with the $15 an hour minimum wage is that all you're essentially doing is moving the bar up, introducing more money into the economy, which basically devalues the dollar. So everything else is going to go up in tandem with it, right? The reason I think we started having this $15 an hour
what
discussion,
you're saying is that there are workers, okay, and say you have this worker who always buys 1 pack of paper towels. Just a random example.
Mm-hmm.
Say that pack of paper towels costs $7.50. Now
it's an expensive pack of paper towels.
It's a big one.
I got it.
it's
made of fucking silk, bro.
So this is also an example because Mark Cuban talks about this and he says toothpaste, for example, it doesn't take up a lot of space. You're always going to need it. And it doesn't necessarily cost a lot. So what I started doing is what Mark Cuban does. I buy toothpaste for the entire year.
Yeah.
Because it's a few boxes underneath my sink. When we need toothpaste, we have it. And I don't have to worry about whether or not I need toothpaste, how much it's going to cost, where I'm going to get it from, or nothing. I buy it all from Amazon. It comes to the doorstep. It goes under the sink, and I don't think about it for a fucking year.
Yeah.
So that's just an example. But what I'm saying is this person maybe they're doing the exact same thing, right? But they can only afford to buy that one pack. So now in introducing a higher wage to them, maybe now they're going out and they're buying 2 packs. So you have a larger amount of money chasing about the same amount of goods.
Well, it's economics is all based on supply and demand, right? So let's say in your mentality in this world, basically what happens is you're looking at it as a 1-for-1. But imagine instead of it being a 1-for-1, it's a 500 to 1.
Yeah.
Right. We've just now introduced 500 per capita people
So
doing
in
that with
example,
toothpaste. Now, toothpaste industry is going to go, wait a minute, our sales are through the roof because people are buying this. So now I've got to stretch all of this stuff out. So now I'm going to raise the prices of my product because I have to make more of it. I need to bring in more ingredients and blah, blah, blah. So now the price is going. Essentially what happens is, and what inflation is it's a correlation as the amount of money being introduced into the GDP goes up, all the prices that all the paying for is chasing it. It's going up as well. Yeah. So you're not really raising the minimum wage. You're not bringing people or a class of people up to another class. You're not bolstering the middle class on there. Yeah. What you're essentially doing is keeping everything the same. It's just more expensive now.
So let me ask you a question, because in this scenario, what we're talking about is, you know, I think a little bit of an extreme, specifically in the state of North Carolina, but I believe federally too, because the federal minimum wage is what, $7.25 an hour.
It's now 15, isn't it? Didn't they change it? Didn't it change to federal 15?
I feel like this is something we should know if we're going to hold this discussion.
I thought they changed it. Oh, anyways. Go ahead.
So the point I'm getting
it's a living wage, I think is what they call it, not a minimum wage. Go ahead.
Yeah. Potato. So my question is, if increasing the minimum wage would cause the problem you're speaking of, would not increasing the amount of money in people's pockets in general do the exact same thing?
Oh, yeah, it's good. That's what inflation is that you are basically devaluing the dollar. Right. So when you think of a great example of this is back in the 60s, right? People would buy homes for $15,000, $20,000, like regular, like this home would cost them $15,000. And you're like, oh shit. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, what you don't realize is that $15,000 back then might be $150,000 worth today. Yeah. That's inflation. Yeah. Right. The home stays the same. Right. The value kind of goes up. Okay. But really what it is it's just inflation has risen. Yeah. The value of the dollar, right? Bread used to cost a nickel. Now it costs $2.99 a loaf of bread. So, or 99 cents or whatever it is. So,
yeah, I am very much 99-cent bread.
Which is, you know, and that's going to happen in any kind of economy. Now, when you introduce a national minimum wage, everything else is going to go up because everybody has more money. So supply kind of, right now, more people can afford nicer things, right? So demand increases, supply goes down. So now supply's gone down. So now all the prices have to increase, yeah, to kind of meet the demand. And so what ends up happening is there's this tug. And so, and I'm stretching on my economics classes in college.
I think the current housing market is a perfect example.
Well, so the housing market is very weird. And the reason that the $15 minimum wage debate happened is because of the housing market, in my opinion, right? The housing market flew off the rails, even after the bubble burst in 2008. Yeah. Right. The prices of everything flew so high because you had this very unregulated industry, or this industry that was supposedly supposed to be regulated, right, with mortgage ratings and all of this other stuff, that really was unregulated and just kind of went willy-nilly. So prices went through the fucking roof, and people's wages and pay really didn't kind of stay in line with that. Yeah. So it made the American dream of owning a home kind of unattainable. And that's, I think, why you start to see this discussion as to $15 minimum wage. When I say I'm on the fence, that is why. If you were to regulate and actually hold people accountable in big business, in these big mortgage firms, in these hedge funds where they are buying up, I mean, look at what's happening here in the Triangle. You have massive amount of hedge funds and investors, not people, buying up homes because of the money that they can make. So like I've gotten 4 phone calls in the last month about people wanting to buy my homes. They're not actual asking for a client that they have, like a family that wants to buy their home. They're asking because the firm that they work for wants to own the
and I think house. I think that's a kind of a give and take, because you're talking about a potentially middle-class family who owns a home, who sees an opportunity. Maybe they've been looking to downsize. Maybe they want to rent for a little bit. Maybe they want to move to a
right. They're getting
state.
Priced out of the market.
So they're saying we can take this $150,000 in capital gains from where we bought our house years ago, and that's the equity that we have in it, and sell it to this corporate investor who's just going to take it and put it under a property management company and rent it out to lower income families.
Well, they're not, I don't know if they're renting it or they're just sitting on it to kind of swell the market. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But the point I'm making is that the people selling the house could make the decision to say, no, we're against what you're doing. We're not going to sell it. And in turn, they're turning down the the potential equity that, so they could say, well, we'll take the money, or they could turn down the money for, you know,
I don't think like
morals.
I didn't turn down the money because I didn't. So the reason I haven't entertained those, right, is not because I don't want the money. Like, this is great for me. Like, I'm enjoying the fact that, so my house has gone up a lot.
Yeah.
More so than I remember when we first moved into this house, I was talking with my brother-in-law from New York about how much I thought this area was going to grow and what kind of return on investment I would get in 10 years on this house, what kind of equity would be built. And he laughed. I was like, I think in 10 years, 300,000 isn't going to be something that is out, like equity, right? Building that equity, building $300,000 is going to be outside the realm. He laughed. He's like, I don't think it'll be that much. I'm almost there 3 years into, I'm literally like right there. It's insane. So but the reason I haven't jumped on any of those offers is because now I'm in the market, because I don't want to move somewhere outside of where I live. Like, I want to live in this area. Yeah. So I'm now, if I price myself, so yeah, that's great. I have to weigh the option. Like, I can sell my house to these people who are calling me and get cash tomorrow in my pocket and be cash rich. Yeah. But I'm now in a market,
but house poor.
Yeah. Well, no, but I'm now in a market where I'm like, I have all this money. It's great. I can go out and make a cash offer, but now I'm competing with the masses. Yeah. I don't want to do that.
Well, not just that, but to get a comparable house, you would have to spend that amount of money.
Yeah, I'd have to spend all that cash again.
Which puts you right back where you started. So,
I would make, so ideally speaking, what I would do is I'd take the extra cash that I'd make from the sale of this house, put it towards a down payment on another house, and loan out the rest. Yeah. Right. So this house is worth, let's say, $5, right?
$5 whole dollars.
$5 whole dollars. Okay. Like, just easy math, right? This house is worth, but I loaned out 100% of it. Well, I'm being offered, someone's telling me they're going to buy it for $20, right? Okay, well, I pay my loan off with $5. I have $15 now. Granted, I had a loan for $5 in the first place on this house. I'm going to take that $15. I'm going to put it towards my next house, and I'm going to get a loan on top of that for another $5. Yeah. So now my home is now 10 times better than this house, right? Or I've built or whatever. That's kind of the idea behind it. But the housing market in this area is so crazy that the money I would make with the loan, I probably wouldn't get in any better house. Yeah. It would just be more expensive. Yeah. So I don't want to do it. It doesn't make sense for me to do that. Yeah. So I'm just going to live in my house now. Yeah.
So I think you mentioned something earlier about the larger companies, and that's where if I were to say that I was on the fence for a $15 minimum wage, it makes sense. And it's this. The study that they reference to support a $15 minimum wage basically says that all previous times that minimum wage was increased in certain areas with larger companies, it was not noticed and prices did not change that much because basically they were using the minimum wage to their advantage as an organization and only paying what they had to, where the gross revenue and the profits were there to support a higher wage in the first place. Realizing that that definitely doesn't apply to small businesses, and the fact that local economies and small businesses are, you know, they drive it. They make America what it is. They make
up 90% of the economy. Yeah.
Yeah. So
87% of the economy, something like that.
I believe that is unrealistic in a sense that the companies you're talking about that, you know, maybe they pay $10 per hour and they could afford $15 per hour are McDonald's, Amazon, Walmart. You know, they're the ones who could probably keep their prices the same and still increase the minimum wage because they've been able to afford to do so for a long time and they just haven't. But when it comes to mom and pop shops, you know, maybe they pay $10 an hour because that's what they can afford based off of their
so here's the thing, that the argument against $15 an hour is you're going to hurt the mom and pop, which is the large percentage. The other issue that is happening out there is that there always has been, since labor has become a big part federal law, you know, the 1933 Labor Act and blah blah blah. I think it's 1930. I think it was 1933 Labor Act. Anyway, there's always been regulation on what big businesses can do and what corporations can do. And on the books, we have those laws, right? They're on the books. However, there since these laws became on the books, all these other kind of sub laws or whatever you want, loopholes have been created to where, right, we're not supposed to have monopolies in this country, right? There isn't supposed to be a thing called monopolies. Right now, any way you look at it, Amazon is a monopoly. You cannot go to anyone who, you can't go to someone who goes, here's what a monopoly and definition of a business is. Does Amazon fit this? They're not going to go, no, Amazon's not a monopoly. They're going to go, yeah, by the definition you've just explained to me, Amazon fits that criteria. But there is no antitrust going before Congress. Congress has not filed an antitrust lawsuit, right? Because in the legal workings of the system, what's supposed to happen, right, with like Microsoft back in the 90s, Congress files an antitrust suit against Microsoft. Congress essentially takes Microsoft to court and says they are violating this law and we are going to break them up. And then the courts either go, yep, you're right, they are. They towards the letter of the law, they are doing. But for whatever reason, nowadays, the corporations are not getting that kind of regulation because a lot of the politicians are in bed with the corporations, which is ruining the economy. So these giant behemoth corporations that are worth trillions and trillions of dollars are moving into these areas and going, we're still going to pay you $17 an hour or $7 an hour, excuse me. And we're going to build a huge facility and bring 50,000 jobs here. And now the zip code of this place is going to go from average home price of 50,000 to 200,000, 230,000. And the bulk of people who are living here can't afford to live here and now have no place to go, no place to live, no place. Now you're talking about poverty on a massive scale, all because of these things that are supposed to be regulated aren't. Think about cable companies, right? cable companies have essentially violated the law by saying they have coherently come together and said, I'm not going to operate in the area you're going to operate in. You're Time Warner, I'm Spectrum. We're going to work together and say, you can have X, I can have Y, right? Because if you look in this zip code, your only opportunity for cable is Spectrum cable. There's no Xfinity, there's no Comcast, it's either that or you go to satellite. Those are your cable providers, is Spectrum. So in essence, in this zip code, Spectrum has a monopoly.
But there's a reason for that. I can't remember what it was, but there's a reason, and it may have something to do with the infrastructure, but there's a reason that you can't have multiple cable providers inside of a single zip code. I believe the justification and the
right there's a loophole there that creates a loophole has been created. Now, I'm not saying it's evil, but I'm saying by definition, Spectrum in this area has a monopoly.
I think I would care a lot more about a monopoly such as Amazon or a company that provides goods.
Well, who's Amazon's competitor?
Goods and services that are required, that are necessities. Any family who is living in or near poverty who believes that they have to have a cable subscription, I can identify your problem out the gate.
Right. No, I understand. I'm just using it as an example. But think about, all right, when you think about monopolies, who competes with Amazon? I mean, Amazon's going to go, well, Walmart has an online subscription.
If I were to talk about the other side, number one, Amazon has done really well at standing up multiple companies. They're a robotics company. They bought Whole Foods, Amazon Prime Wardrobe, Amazon Prime Video.
You know what Amazon's largest profit is, right?
Third-party sellers.
No, AWS, that's it. AWS is the largest profit margin for Amazon.
So what I'm getting at is you keep saying Amazon, but in fact, Amazon is all of these companies.
Mm-hmm.
Prime is a completely separate company from Amazon.com.
It's under the umbrella of Amazon.
So that's one thing. Because if you went in there, I honestly 100% believe, because rich people don't get rich and stay rich because they're stupid. So I honestly believe that if you went in and you broke up Amazon, they would find whatever legal or tax loophole there was to keep it connected on the back end. Whether that has something to do with some sort of organization that ties these CEOs together or whatever the case is, I honestly believe that, because they've already figured out how to.
Right. They have teams of people.
They've already figured out how to diversify themselves in a sense where they have multiple companies underneath it.
Yes.
So breaking up the larger umbrella, I honestly don't think would hurt them in the long run.
Right. But so for monopolies though, right? Amazon, who owns all of those underlying companies, there is no room for competition. They own it all. That is not supposed to happen, right? If I'm trying to compete against,
I think an answer to your question is, even if you got a company that was borderline able to compete with them in a sense of,
well, look at
goods and services being delivered in a 2-day time
look at Microsoft, right?
More than likely their system would be built on AWS.
Possibly. Well, there's no room, but there's no room in the market to compete against AWS. That's what I'm saying, is that no one can come along as a startup and have any kind of real competition against AWS.
Yeah.
AWS would just consume them and then disband them. Look at what happened to Microsoft. And I thoroughly believe this. If Microsoft never would have had an antitrust back in the 90s, you would not know what Google is. Google would not be a thing. Microsoft would have just swallowed them up. You might have a Google operating or an Android operating system, but it would all be under Microsoft, because Microsoft was so big that they were just buying everything up that they were forced to kind of break stuff off.
So another reason why I might be for the $15 hour minimum wage is this. It's the same argument. So I believe this point gets a little ambiguous, because I believe it's the same argument that people like me against the $15 an hour minimum wage use to justify it. And that is that if you increase the $15 an hour minimum wage, the companies who cannot afford it, it's the labor force is a service that companies purchase. And it's just like you were talking about, the dollars chasing the goods or services.
Mm-hmm.
So as soon as you increase that minimum amount, you increase the price of the service that the companies have to purchase, they're going to buy less. It's just like that beer that you're drinking. If they doubled the price, you might buy fewer. So it's like, if I have open positions for 10 employees and I pay them $10 per hour each, as soon as you tell me I have to pay them $15 per hour, I'm going to cut my labor force to be able to afford what I can afford, because that's what I have budgeted. And so the reason why the other side, one of the YouTube videos I listened to, didn't think that would be a problem is because, and I'll tell you in a second why I think it's ambiguous, is because if you have 10 people and they all work 2 jobs, they're already collecting that amount of money. So in increasing the minimum wage to a living wage, if everybody is making $7.50 an hour, but they're working 2 jobs to get themselves closer, you know, it's not a $15 per hour exchange, because they have to work maybe 80 hours to be able to make that amount of money, but you're taking them from working 80 hours down to where they're only working 1 job. So they work 40 hours to make the same amount of money. And so where you're saying, well, this company is going to cut its staff, it may not have to, because one of these people that's working 2 jobs to be able to make the money they need to take home, now they only have to work this 1 job. So you're not going to have to cut them. They're just going to leave.
So do you think, so then this leads me, since we're talking about labor force, do you not think that the $15 living wage, minimum wage, is part of the reason we are seeing problems in the labor market that we're seeing currently? So the issue in the so right now
like
they're
that
calling
brings us back to the question of whether or not it was actually increased.
Well, so the question is, what kind of effect does this have on the labor market? Currently, they're calling this the Great Resignation, right? I think it's not because of one specific thing, right? We're coming off of COVID, you know, we're dealing with a whole bunch of stuff. But out there in the labor market, what you're finding is it is very tough to kind of find people to fill positions in those kind of in the service industry, in the hospitality, in the industries that don't typically get the $15, that can't afford to do the $15 an hour, right? So like if I'm a mom and pop pizzeria restaurant and I always just worked, it's me, my wife, you know, my son will come in on Fridays and Saturdays and help deliver because he's old enough to drive a car.
Yeah.
And then I have like maybe 1 other worker. Well, I can't afford to pay that 1 other worker $15 an hour, right? So now my business is going to start to suffer, and I can't find people. Now I'm overworked. Now I'm stretched so thin.
So that's one reason, what you just talked about there, where you're basically required to pay that person. That's one reason I'm against a minimum wage.
Right, because the mom and pops will suffer.
I believe the purpose of the minimum wage is to stop the major corporations from taking advantage of the labor force. I believe it serves a purpose. I don't believe
this is going to sound really bad this is going to sound really bad for someone who claims to be conservative, but go ahead. I got my argument against that.
Well,
I agree with you. I agree 100% with what you're saying.
But that's what I'm saying is if there is a company, because if you had no minimum wage, then they're like, oh, well, we'll pay these
Right.
people $5 an hour. Fuck
Right.
them.
But
You know, so that's
what,
why I believe a minimum wage serves a purpose, where I don't believe that it's necessary, and why I'm against a $15 an hour minimum wage is because that guy that you're talking about, who's an employee for a family owned and operated business, he's the outsider. Okay. He is going to get the recognition when he shows up on time every day, puts in the effort, and 3 months later is a pretty standard. We say 90-day probationary period. So if you come in to work for me, maybe I pay you minimum wage for 90 days. When you're still there after 90 days, you're automatically going to get a raise, because that is 100% more effort than everyone else who left at 30 and 60 days. And then after that 90 days, I'm going to say, I'm going to give you a review on a monthly basis, and we're going to review it quarterly. And then maybe you see another raise at 1 year. And then maybe you see another raise. So you're getting raises
agree.
based off of your increased skill, ability, dedication, loyalty, contribution to the organization, especially where you're the guy who is not part of the family. It's like, without you, we could not operate. That's why we hired you, because we have a family. It's 3 people.
I wish a
needed a
lot of
fourth
people
one.
thought like that. A lot of people don't think like that. They want the instant gratification.
No, 100%.
Of the $15
And that's
an
where
hour.
that's
So
that's
if you're
why-
telling me, if I'm looking at you and I've got kids to feed, I've got a roof to keep over my head, and you're mom and pop, and you're telling me all of these great things that, like, if you stick with me and blah, blah, and all of this, hell, we could even make you a profit share in 2 years if you stick with us long enough, blah, blah. That's all fine and great. Awesome. Cool. This guy's telling me he's going to give me $15 right now.
Yeah.
And 2 years down the road, I'd love to be able to work towards that. Fine. But 2 years down the road doesn't keep the roof over my head at the end of tonight. And that's what I'm worried about. This guy's going to get me there tonight. That's what I'm worried about.
Yeah, what you just talked about, instant gratification.
Yeah.
And that's very much it's the same in the sales world. People go in, it's full commission sales, and it's like, oh, hey, I want to get a paycheck, but it might take you 6 months to master the process.
Right.
So in 6 months, you could be making $1,000 paycheck every single week. And some weeks right now, you may go home without any money, or you can go work for that guy and make
And a lot of people,
$300 to $600
this
per
is
week
where
consistently.
This is where I think, if you haven't, so this is the difference in mindset of where your perspectives and your upbringing and your experiences are going to come into play, right? If I'm from a standpoint of a class of people, or my family is lower class, where I've never been given an opportunity to kind of move forward, or been floated long enough to move forward, right? I've always kind of been on my own in terms of providing for myself and my family. I might say, okay, I'm going to take the risk here and go towards the pipe dream of 2 years from now being a profit share. And if that happens 1 in 100 times, great. But most of the time, what's going to happen is, that's great. I would love to work for that. But 2 years down the road, planning doesn't keep food in my kids' mouths tonight.
Yeah.
I'm looking for what happens tonight.
And
I will sacrifice that. Maybe my kid will be able to get there, right? Maybe I'll be able to provide something for my kid, or a foundation for my kid. So I'm going to make the sacrifice to go do this now. What you were saying earlier about companies moving in and doing, the big corporations, and I said I had kind of an argument against it about the $15 an hour. That's what unions are for. So this is where unions are a good thing. You have this kind of ability to collectively bargain. You have this ability to go into an employer and say, this workforce is going to unionize, and you're going to have to deal with us as someone who's worked in the corporate world as management. I've gone to the anti-union seminars. I've worked in a union market. I've seen how corrupt unions can be. But the idea of them, and some of them do great, some of them, just like anything else, right? There are good examples and there are bad examples. Like anywhere you go in life, there's going to be, good priests and bad priests. There's going to be good baseball players and bad baseball players, guys who are putting in the effort and guys who are taking steroids. Like there's always going to be the bad apples, but by and large, that's what unions are for. Unions are there to help stand the workforce up.
So what are you saying in reply to my argument earlier? Instead of a minimum wage existing to protect against companies who want to take advantage of employees, then you would have a union? That's what you're saying?
So you would have
a minimum wage, you have a union?
So unions basically are a collective bargaining chip that where if the workforce is large enough, and it's a way to kind of keep some of the bigger companies, like you were saying, in kind of check, right? So if I'm an Amazon employee and I'm in a warehouse of 20,000 people and we unionize and we bring in a union and we pass all of the union busing that Amazon has done, and we go to corporate and we say, this is now a thing. You can't violate this by law. Then you can set your standard, right? You can have a $30 an hour minimum wage.
Well, and
now there are other things that could happen. Sure. Right. I could get $30 an hour, but I have to pay $15 out of, an hour out of dues or whatever. That's fine. But I have a collective bargaining and Amazon's got no choice but to do it. They can now no longer close just for sakes of closing to go move somewhere else, because a lot of big companies will try and do that. And the law says you can't.
So the reason I ask that is because Amazon is at a $15 an hour minimum wage, no matter where they are. It's my understanding they start at $15 an hour.
They start at $15 an hour. Do you know why?
Because that lady complained.
Because they got so much bad press.
Yeah.
About their labor and this is a thing. It's in high volume distribution.
Yeah, but
labor management is
there now. The federal minimum wage, I just looked it up, is still $7.25 an hour.
Yeah, they're at a living minimum wage at $15.
They're at $15 an hour.
Mm-hmm.
And their entire workforce, because I'm in all their Facebook groups, is still trying to unionize. And it just seems like a bunch of people who are like, oh, we should be making $30 an hour. And it's like,
so first off, people always want more.
Yeah.
That's always the thing. Secondly,
the reason that's called greed.
Well, the reason so here's the other thing. So I've interviewed for Amazon. I have no problem talking about it. I did not get the job. I'm going to go ahead and say this. So you can say I have got biased.
Get the job or you turned it down?
I didn't get the job.
Oh,
I didn't get it. It's fine. After about an hour into my interview, my 6-hour-long Zoom interview, I kind of realized I didn't want the job. And I just kind of without saying anything like, I'm good. I kind of was like, well, let me talk to the next guy and see if it's just this chemistry. Yeah. And once your heart goes out of an interview, you kind of just don't give a shit. Yeah. Right. And you're like, and I was not offered the job. That being said, here's what I know about Amazon. Here are the questions I specifically asked. What do you do to take care of your employees? Like if you bring me in as an operations manager on a shift, whether I'm shift 1 or shift 2, I think it's like 1A or 1B, because they have 4 different types of they have 4 different operations managers, right? One works
for a facility,
for facility, for one facility, for the big distribution facility. I was not sworn to an NDA, so I don't give a fuck. So how it was explained, at least for the Garner facility, is you would basically, if you were operations manager for the shift during the day,
that's an interesting idea.
If you're during the day, you basically would work either Sunday to Thursday or Wednesday to Saturday. And your shift would be like 6 to like 7 or something.
So 5 days a week.
Yeah, you're 5 days a week,
6 to 7. So
you basically work at your basic 12-hour shift, 6 to 6, or usually a little after.
Okay, so 4 operations managers, a little bit of overlap. That basically covers 7 days a week.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. So, asking about like, would you specifically for me, like, would you help me go get an MBA? Because there are some companies that will help you go get like further on education or blah, blah, blah. They were like, yeah, we won't do that. You could just go on your own and, do online schooling in your off time.
That's really
And I'm
surprising.
like, okay, cool.
You would think a company of that size would be like, yeah, we pay for your schooling.
Yeah. At the time,
you would think.
At the time, I was flat out told, no, you can go do that on your own. So I started now this is my initial phone interview. So I started doing some research. And the research that I was doing, now I go from this initial phone interview to doing some research to like getting set up with a Zoom interview like 3 months later. It was a long gap. I don't know how long a gap it was. I was also unemployed. So, COVID was going on. So time kind of slowed down for me because I was stuck inside the house.
I'm kind of happy you were unemployed.
Yeah, I got you. Me too. Anyways. Anyway, so I started doing research. And so what I kind of started reading about were all these different stories. And again, grain of salt here. I can't attest to the veracity of all of this, but a lot of the stuff I was reading was like the corporate structure of Amazon, like the corporate management kind of looked at the hourly employees as I don't want them working here more than a year or two.
Why?
Because they were of the idea or the mentality of it is cheaper for us to just because our processes are so good that I can put anybody in that seat at an hourly wage and train them within 5 minutes. It is more cost effective for us to just bring someone new in every X amount of years and train them because our processes are so honed and so good and our technology is so up to date than it is to try and bring this other person up through the ranks. So their view on people wasn't the same view I had. So when I go in to a distribution, because I work in distribution.
So worse than not caring about the employees.
They don't care about their employees.
That sounds like a fucking like a drill sergeant.
Yeah.
When I went through basic training,
this is the research that I was doing at the time.
Battalion at Fort Leonard Wood was the 43rd Adjutant Battalion. Yeah. That was your in processing. And so if you're in basic training and say you're going for a run or you're doing the obstacle course or the confidence course, whatever, and you start to cry, literally or figuratively, just, oh, I can't do it, I'm blah, blah, blah. Your drill sergeant's like, hey, you know what? And usually they would do this in a group, but they'd be like, look, if you can't handle it, we get it. We understand. We'll just go to the 43rd and get another one. And that was 100% true because you know how the military recruiting works. We've got all of them coming in.
Well, that's how Amazon looks at it.
Fuck you. We'll get a new one.
So the company that I worked for that trained me in being in operations management and distribution was probably one of the greatest companies I've ever worked for, like on a large scale. Like, yes, they planned against unions and stuff like that, like any other big company does, but their goal was always to take care of their employees. Like from day one of training was always told, like, the warehouse workers and the delivery drivers are the backbone of this company. And we want those people to succeed, whether they succeed here at our company or out there at some other company. We want them to succeed. Their success is our goal and this was how it was explained to me by the VP of operations of the entire company. He said, if they succeed outside at another company, that is free advertising for us. That is free word of mouth advertising. If you work for me as a warehouse worker, as a base on picker, and I set you up for success and I help you try and attain your goals, and you find a better job that we just can't compete with, and you go to them and you're hot shit over there, other people are going to see your hot shit. They're going to be like, where the fuck did you come from? Like, you came from that company?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I've got people knocking at my door going, hey, are you guys hiring? Because I know so-and-so.
You help that guy
awesome.
Get there.
I would love some help because the other company's not doing that, or I can't find anything. Cool. Yeah, I got openings. And I would, like, in the different markets I would work, without even having jobs posted, I would get phone calls. Like, I would get HR department calling me like, hey, we sifted through some of this. There's this one guy who sounds really great. You think we can bring him on somewhere? I know we don't have anything open. We don't have headcount. Is there anything we can do? Because he sounds really awesome. He knows so-and-so. this is, this seems like it would be a great fit and someone who would be willing to be here for a while.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how we looked at our people. Like our people were our best asset.
Yeah.
Amazon, in my opinion, from my perspective, does not look at their operations management or their warehouse or delivery drivers with the same kind of attitude. And I don't want to be a part of that company.
Well, I agree with you. However, at least from a delivery driver perspective, they are not employees of Amazon.
No, they're contractors.
Yeah.
A lot of actually Amazon employees are contractors.
Yeah.
You are technically, like, people would look at you at your business model, what you do, they think you're a part of Amazon. You're not. You're a contractor for Amazon.
No.
Are you a third party?
Contractors for Amazon get paid by Amazon.
Okay.
Amazon doesn't pay.
Part of the largest workforce.
Without Amazon, I would not have a business.
Right.
Because when everything leaves my warehouse, it goes to Amazon. However.com, we are kind of staged to take on, because Walmart just stood up there, fulfilled by Walmart arm. So we are kind of prepped and ready to take on a client that does that. However, Walmart's requirements to sell on their marketplace are a little bit more strict. And I'm going to pause it. I'll be right back. Still going to pause it.
Bearded veteran?
Yeah, I used to own a physical bookstore.
What do they want?
All different kinds of stuff, but I don't know where they're getting my number. Anyways,
are we back to recording? Nice.
Yeah.
This is going to be very juicy. I can already tell. I'm not going to like this. Double India IPA.
So
buttons. You sew buttons. Go back to, are we back on minimum wage?
Yeah. So I just want to finish it. I want to finish it up a little bit, because we do have to move on to cancel culture. I think we're going to get 2 solid episodes out of this, but basically $15 an hour minimum wage. I am against it. The one thing I wanted to say is I'm against it. And real quick, just going back to talking about drill sergeants going to the 43rd and getting a new one. I don't think the entire military is like that. That's just something they would say to us to kind of coax us into doing the right thing or getting back on track. But in the Army as well, basic training, advanced training, and throughout your career, you would have a fitness standard that you would have to meet.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So if you met that standard, you got to keep your job. Your reward for doing the minimum was
keeping your job.
That's getting to stick around.
That's any job.
So your reward for doing the minimum is minimum pay. So one of the reasons why I'm against minimum wage in general, but also the $15 an hour minimum wage, is I don't think anyone should be paid that, but I think everyone should earn more than that. So I believe it comes down to merit base. It's the same concept you were talking about before, where if you come in the door, and I think the biggest difference is people should be starting this journey as individuals before they have a family. So they shouldn't have to be put in a position where you have 2 jobs. One's going to pay you enough right now, but you have no opportunity for growth or advancement, or one is going to pay you a little bit less, but you have lots of opportunity for growth and advancement. That's the job you want to get. That's why people should be starting their careers, working their way into a little bit of experience to figure out what they want to do when they're 16, 17, 18, 20, 22 years old.
Right. I completely understand that and agree with it. I also know that there are a lot of people that have different experiences and circumstances in this country.
My mom
that aren't going to be.
She was a wife. She was a mom for 30 fucking years.
Right.
So when she was put in a position where she had to have a job, as much as she would love to tell you that she can do anything, she has zero experience.
Right.
Her experience is how she used to manage that one store up in Pennsylvania.
Right. But what I'm saying
years
is that you can't kind of base, in my opinion, because you can't base that everyone should kind of choose job B instead of job A to kind of grow, especially when starting out, because we can't put people into a monolith. Life is not that black and white.
I don't think they should, or that they have to. I think the reason that the job that pays enough exists is for the people who are afraid or cannot take the risk.
Right.
But I believe that the jobs that pose a risk have a greater reward on the back end. That's 100% true. Full commission sales jobs make more money end over end than almost any other job, especially in a position where you have uncapped commission.
Right.
If you're full commission, more than likely it's uncapped commission because they don't have to pay you a base salary.
Uncapped commission is you are either feast or famine.
Yeah.
Most of the time.
Yeah, but when the feast comes,
I get
it. That's what I'm saying. Once you learn the system, because once you learn the system that gets you that nugget,
right,
you're never gonna unlearn it. So sure, it's feast or famine, but the famine only exists while you're going through the learning process.
Well, no.
So I don't think everyone should go into a sales role. I don't think we should force everyone to do something they wouldn't enjoy, they wouldn't be a good fit for, they wouldn't make, whatever the case may be. But the ones that pay enough, you're just not going to see the reward on the back end that you would if you put the risk up on the front end.
Right.
And if you're someone who has a family or a mom who recently had to take on a job and has no experience, whatever the case may be, that job that pays enough exists. I just don't think you can get upset that you're getting paid minimum wage or slightly above minimum wage if that's the category that you fall into.
Okay. So I guess where I stand on it, I lean more towards I'm about 80%, 85% against $15 minimum wage, national minimum wage. Not living wage, but minimum wage. I understand why people want it. I think it's a great idea on paper. I think it does more harm than good to the overall economy, is kind of how I'm looking at it. That is kind of where I stand as a summary to all of it. I also believe that we need more and better regulation against big business, and which leads us to, money out of politics, go there. But yeah, that's kind of where I am.
So to end on it, because I think this is super important, because another thing that a lot of people don't realize is the difference between state and federal. So people go, oh, we need to raise the minimum wage, and they're talking about federal. And it's like, well, as soon as you do something on a federal level, such as raising the minimum age for smoking to 21, that means most states are going to adopt that because they don't want to lose whatever funding or support they get from the federal government that directly correlates with that. So the same would apply for the minimum wage. If you raise the minimum wage federally to $15 an hour, most states are going to adopt that minimum wage because they don't want to lose whatever support they get from an economic standpoint from the federal government. However, in saying all that, any state or locality can implement or raise their existing minimum wage. They don't have to wait for the federal government to do it. So while in North Carolina, the minimum wage, the federal minimum wage is $7.25 an hour. Here are some state minimum wages as of January 1st, 2022. Arizona, $12.80. California, $15. California, one of the more expensive areas to live in, is still only $15 an hour minimum wage. Colorado, $12.56. Delaware, $10.50. Illinois, $12. Maine, $12.75. Maryland, $12.50. Massachusetts 1425, Michigan 987, Minnesota 1033, Missouri 1115, Montana 920, New Jersey $13, New Mexico 1150, New York 1320.
Don't go through all 50 states.
I'm not. I got like 4 or 5 more. But my point is, on this list, as of January 1st, 2022, and by looks of it, the previous minimum wage they raised it from, none of them were at
$15,
the $7. And
so right.
No,
So
none of them were at the $7.25 mandated by the federal government.
Right. So North Carolina's higher than the federal standard minimum wage, right? They're, I think, $9 or $10 an hour. $9 an hour.
I don't know where we're at.
But like, so, and then companies can choose, like my company chooses to opt for the living wage, which we've determined to be $15.50 for the county that we're in. So my company is just like, warehouse work comes in off the street, gets paid $15.50 to start out, and gets raised after his first 90 days or her first 90 days, his or her. Because that's what my company says, this is what we want to do. We can afford it. We can do that. And I'm fine with that. Like, that's a difference than forcing us to go, hey, we don't know what your overhead is, your expenses are, you need to pay X.
Yeah. So in not having the federal minimum wage at $15 an hour, we've opened up this opportunity for companies, localities, and states to pay or mandate whatever they see fit.
Mm-hmm.
So if the North Carolina minimum wage is $9 or $10 an hour, that means now on the top end, that means your company can pay whatever they want over that minimum. On the back end, that means that if someone is starting a company, they have to budget in the $9 or $10 per hour. So if the state minimum wage were to go up to $20 per hour, if someone's starting a company and they look at their numbers and they're like, okay, this is what my gross revenue looks like, I can afford to hire 2 people at $10 per hour. And the state says you got to pay your workers a minimum of $20 per hour. Now they're down to 1 employee. So that kind of brings us full circle back to the small business. But I am in full support of a company saying, this is our starting pay. We have the same thing. We have a starting pay.
Yeah, we have a starting pay. We have, because we want, and well, there's benefits for us to be able to go on to our local city and town and county and say, we pay a living wage. Like that's a boost for us. Yes. Granted, it gives, there's good karma, I guess, good advertising we get to use and say, but that's not why we do it. We've just kind of recognized, like, a part of it is because it's what all of our competitors do. It's what, Amazon kind of helped start that by going, oh, well, we're getting such bad press, we're going to start everybody at $15 an hour who comes in and works for us because we're getting such bad press, which really did force a lot of people in distribution, doesn't matter what type of distribution you're doing, to move to $15 an hour or more.
Yeah.
Because Amazon was moving into places, and if I had a distribution facility that needed warehouse workers, whether I was doing car parts or alcohol or building material or whatever, I need to now compete with Amazon for labor. Yeah. So if I know they're doing that, now I've got to make room in the books, or I'm not going to survive, because I'm not going to be able to get workers. Yeah. Because what's going to end up happening is Amazon's going to put up, we're hiring warehouse workers with zero experience at $15 an hour, with experience X dollars more.
Yeah.
Or based on experience. And now they're poaching my guys who've been with me for 10 years at this mom and pop distribution facility, who are making $12 an hour, which is the minimum wage or whatever. And they're like, I'm going to go over there and work. And they're going to pay me $4 more an hour. Yeah. And I just can't afford to do anything about it.
Our situation, or our starting pay, is basically, it's lower than that, but we pay bonuses based off of production.
You can pay me bonuses.
No, your entire paycheck was a bonus.
Your entire paycheck is a bonus.
No, but it's based off of the numbers. I think the biggest difference is if you've got a guy loading a truck, your company isn't necessarily going to make more money because he's able to put 30 pieces of lumber on the truck versus 60. If the truck is making a delivery and the customer only ordered 30, then that's what he puts on the truck.
That's what he puts on.
Whereas in our scenario, the sales is disconnected from the prep. And so the sales kind of can't happen unless we're sending shit out the door.
Right.
And so the bigger that number is,
your volume,
you're
high volume. I'm high margin, you're high volume.
Yeah. So,
like my pack of lumber is I'm selling it at X amount of margin. And I know what my margin needs to be. The difference is everything that comes in my warehouse has to leave. Yes.
That's what the biggest difference is. In yours, it wouldn't matter the margin or the volume. If it doesn't sell, it's not going anywhere.
Yeah, it doesn't go anywhere.
I'm not. There is no fulfillment in my business. Well, it's if we got 30 pallets on a Tuesday and we got rid of 30 pallets on a Wednesday. Now, granted, we may have to shift gears and say, okay, we're going to do a little area beautification, fucking clean this place up and, do some different shit to keep everybody busy and a paycheck in their pocket. But that would be phenomenal if we had 30 pallets come in, 30 pallets go back out, and call it a fucking day. Like,
I would love that. I mean, we still do have that because we need space. Like, I've only got so much space I can use, right? As does every warehouse.
Yeah, but to send it out, you have to sell it, right?
No. Well, some of my stuff. So I run about 50-50 on what it is. Some of the stuff I already have deposits on. Now, I haven't sold it, but it's custom made for that building or that job.
Yeah.
Like I have a house I'm building that requires a sliding door that's 6 panels long and is, X amount, like everything is measured out exactly for that. That is custom ordered, right? If I'm going to have to bring that to my facility, I've got to get a deposit down because I'm not going to take the risk of having that expense just for you after I've placed the order and received it to come to me and go, we've changed our mind. We don't really want that.
No.
Because I can't now turn around and sell that material to someone else because that was specifically made for your job. No. So I have to get a deposit. But that makes up about, 45%, 47% of my business.
Yeah.
And that's the highest margin stuff I have.
But it's still sold.
No. It's my inventory until it's not sold until it leaves my warehouse. I am not allowed to hold things by IRS, by the standards and laws of the IRS.
But I'm saying if you get that product, you took a deposit on it. If for any reason the customer says, I don't want it anymore, do you refund their deposit?
Unless the vendor will refund us, the people who made it.
So
it depends on the scenario. So
you're either covering costs and then you have this new piece of material that you have to sell.
Yeah.
But at least you got your costs covered. Or you're getting a refund from the vendor and providing a refund to your customer.
Yes.
Okay. I guess the biggest difference is we don't have any customers. So 100% of the time it has to leave the warehouse. The customer would be the client that we do the prep for. Yeah. And once we close that sale, which we haven't really talked about this, whether or not there's going to be some sort of contract or long-term agreement.
Well, so that's what we have. We do a lot of business with contracts. So like you're going to come to my business and sign a contract saying, I am going to give you X amount of dollars to get this, knowing that materials and blah, blah, blah will change as whatever the vendor tells you, but I'm going to give you a deposit for X.
No.
Knowing that I'm still going to have to pay more money.
Yours is goods, mine is services.
Yeah.
Because if a client comes to me and wants to sign a contract, but they don't have any products, why are you here?
Yeah.
Like, if you can't put anything in my warehouse, then I can't charge you to send anything back out.
Yeah. Tomorrow I'm delivering almost $100,000 window package to a house.
That's exciting.
I mean, think about it. When you think about it, like the windows alone are costing this person $100,000.
That sounds like some of the houses I went to for the construction company I did sales for.
Yeah.
So next we're gonna be talking about cancel culture.
Lame.
I think I want to bring the inflation and $15 an hour minimum wage to a close. One thing I did want to bring up, and I don't know if
you say you want to bring it to a close. Oh, one more caveat.
I don't know if you know anything about this. But basically, Dan Price. Have you ever heard of him?
Yes, I've heard the name. I can't picture the face.
So he raised slashed his own salary by $1 million to be able to give all his employees a pay raise. And he raised his minimum annual salary with his employees to $70,000.
Awesome. Good
and
for him.
Still says it still works 6 years later. However, if you look at the timeline, and one of the reasons why I wanted to bring him up is because his brother was suing him, basically saying that, hang on, I have it right here. Because a lot of people are like, oh, look, Dan Price did it. On April 24th, 2015, a lawsuit was filed against Dan Price by his brother Lucas. The lawsuit claimed that Price was overpaying himself and depriving shareholders of profits. So basically, in order to rectify the situation, he raised his employees' salary. So the money that he was paying himself, he paid to them. Problem solved.
He was robbing Peter to pay Paul. I don't know. I don't know the situation, honestly.
Yeah. So,
I mean, I've heard
there's different opinions on it, but my argument is that if the pay increase to the employees comes around the same time as the lawsuit, and then he gets out of the lawsuit, I feel like that kind of answers the question. He didn't do it to be a good. He definitely got good PR for it because he claimed that it was to take care of his employees and have their back.
I can't debate it. I mean, I can speculate on it all day long.
Well,
I don't know anything about it.
I think my only question of you is, if I am the CEO of a company and I get sued and I get out of the lawsuit by increasing my employees' pay, do you think that I did it because I have a good heart and I want to take care of my employees, or because I was trying to get out of a fucking lawsuit?
This is going to sound really bad, but does it really fucking matter? Why does it? I mean, really? I mean, honestly, what? So if you did it to get out of the lawsuit, so what? Your employees benefited. They're not hurt by the lawsuit, so you could argue that he's being good. Now we're getting into like the article, an ethical debate of what is.
The purpose behind the pay. So
I mean, I don't know if it really fucking matters.
Yeah, one of the reasons I ask is because the pay that he gives to his employees is still $70,000.
Yeah.
So he takes it from whatever the hell it was, 30, 40, 50 $1,000, raises the minimum to $70,000.
Yeah.
And that minimum is still $70,000 over 6 years after this took place.
Yeah. You could also argue, though, that if he would have lost the lawsuit, we don't know this, we're now in hypotheticals.
Yeah.
If he lost the lawsuit, the people who would suffer the most would probably have been his employees. Because guess what? He has to pay now this, and he might have to lay off some employees. I mean, you don't know. I mean, we just don't, why speculate? That's why I asked, does it really fucking matter what I think of this person from a moral standpoint? I really don't care.
Well, I think it reinforces my point earlier of, if companies raise the minimum wage, the larger organizations aren't going to hurt. They're not going to have to raise prices. The margin, the area to be able to pay people more already exists. And I think that's a prime example of that. Because whether he did it for the lawsuit or he did it out of the goodness of his heart, he raised the employee's minimum pay from whatever it was to $70,000. Why was that not a thing to start with?
I understand your argument, but I guess I don't agree with the hypothesis. Does that make sense?
I'm just saying that if the lawsuit is the reason why he raised it, because it was like he's paying himself.
Right. You're
all
saying the
this
same
money,
thing, like the large
and he
companies are
hides it
doing
by-
it in the same. I guess we're arguing from how I'm listening to it. It's like an apples to oranges conversation.
That's the only way to compare anything.
You're saying, he was forced to do it from a lawsuit in. Yeah,
I'm not saying he was forced to do it from the lawsuit. I'm saying he did it to get out of the lawsuit. He was paying himself millions of dollars a year. And his
you could
brother
say
sued him, saying.
you
he
can
was
make the
stealing
argument that
shareholders.
that is forcing someone to do it by putting a lawsuit on him. You're forcing them to make a decision, and that's the decision he made, that he was forced to do it. Like, would he have done it without the lawsuit? Who knows? Would the lawsuit, if the lawsuit went through and he lost, would it have hurt his employees? Who knows? Would have been the only one liable, or would it been the whole business? Who knows? Right. So I think we're in hypotheticals there. When it comes to kind of big businesses doing it, I think most businesses will kind of like what happened with Amazon. Amazon was kind of forced into this really bad situation of PR. So to combat that, to give themselves some good PR, they push themselves to like $15 an hour. When they did that, since they were such a large distribution of goods that touched a lot of different markets, a lot of other warehousing and distribution markets had to go, well, now we have to raise our minimum wage. So as far as evil as they are, right, they kind of did a good thing by increasing their huge workforce to do $15 an hour, even for the shitty reasons that they did it. And they're still a shitty company for having to be in that place in the first place. They still forced competition in other distribution channels and other warehousing channels to say, I can't compete now in the labor market. Like, I cannot get my goods out the door if I don't have workers. And in order to get workers, I'm going to need to match or exceed the $15 an hour that Amazon's paying, because they're just down the street. And so then you kind of had this chain effect. Everybody did it.
So I think that, ladies and gentlemen, is minimum wage and inflation.
Now we're going to get high. No, I'm just kidding.
If you like listening to Joe and I do a back and forth on current events, politics, and several of our upcoming episodes talking about many different things, including the next one where we're going to talk about Joe Rogan and cancel culture, then be sure to leave us a 5-star review. It does help other people find the podcast. And just go ahead and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Tell your friends to subscribe as well. And we'll see you on the next episode of the Veteran Talk Show.
This is the Veteran Talk Show. If you or someone you love is suffering as a victim of sexual harassment, sexual assault, needs help with addiction and recovery, or mental health and well-being, then please go to veterantalkshow.com/resources. This show is hosted, produced, and edited by Ryan Smeltz. Our co-host is Joe Ballack, and a guest starring veterans.